Here on The Colour of Country Life, always a pleasure to speak with the member for Farrer, Susan Lee, now the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party. How are you, Susan?
I'm really well, Ricky. It's great to speak with you and all of your listeners.
Yeah, and it was great to catch up with you around the time of the federal election as well. And then I guess there was a period where we had to work out who the leadership team was going forward for the Liberals, and you've been chosen to be the Deputy Leader.
I have. It's a great honour and a real privilege to be chosen by my party and now to be Deputy Leader of the Opposition behind Peter Dutton, who is an excellent leader, someone I came into Parliament with actually in 2001. So we're both fellow travellers from what we call the class of 2001, and probably the only two Liberals now in the shadow ministry that have experienced opposition before.
Oh, well, that's going to be very useful, and you'd be hoping for only a short period of time as well, I imagine. But the Albanese government seems to be just sort of coasting at the moment, even though there's this energy crisis going on.
Well, look, I always say a government is only as good as its opposition, so it's not our job to actually give them a leave pass on anything at all, and we're watching very closely. Certainly the energy crisis, and it is a crisis under the current Labor government because they simply don't seem to me to be able to deal with it in a way that guarantees the people I represent affordable electricity. So it's all about the transition. We know we're underway with a transition to renewables, and that's really important for the globe and for reducing our emissions, and we all understand that. But if you don't manage that transition properly, then you end up with problems that we're seeing in front of us. So look, it is early days and we do need to get this right, and we will be constructive where we need to be and critical where we have to be, because I don't want the people I represent on low and fixed incomes not to be able to pay their power bills or to experience blackouts.
And on another side of, I was going to say the coin, but the Rubik's Cube, perhaps you have got a large battery plant being installed, I think in Griffith, in your electorate, which will be the largest in the nation.
And look, battery storage is part of the mix and it's really important, but it doesn't cover everything every hour of the day for every purpose. And it certainly doesn't cover manufacturing industries in the way that we need it to. So, you know, we don't want to not manufacture aluminium in this country anymore. We don't want to be importing all of our steel from overseas. Much of course, comes from China. We want to have heavy industries and they need baseload power, and so we have to get this mix right.
And they need labour as well, and coming into your shadow portfolio areas, skills, industry and training is what you've been allocated. You've got some history in this portfolio area before, I recall.
Well, that's right. It's always been a great interest to me, but I did hold it in opposition before, and skills and training always top of the list for rural and regional communities, because if we can get the right balance of skills, we have the right industries for our regions, and that's vital. But we also have the right career paths for people and, you know, the variety of different jobs that you can pursue, and you need the backup as far as the training, whether it be private training, whether it be TAFE, whether it be on the job. We have to get all of that working well. So I see this very much through the individuals concerned and giving them satisfying careers.
Well, I would have thought you'll have a fairly, not easy time, but certainly some bipartisanship with the government on this front, simply because it's generating more jobs for Australians. We've got record low unemployment. So hopefully more skills, industry and training might reduce reliance on foreign labour, where we've seen during the pandemic that can be hard to come by.
It can be, and unemployment is at absolutely record lows, which of course means that we need visas and visa processing to speed up so it can get the workforce out, particularly for our agricultural labour. And during the campaign, the Labor Party, now the government, said they didn't like the look of the ag visa. I hope they have another good look at it, because it's vital to get those horticultural workers out so we can pick the crop and not have it rotting on the ground, as we've seen in too many parts of Australia. So, yes, training Australians, but also recognising that we do need to import labour at certain times.
Well, certainly on that front, Murray Watt, the new Agriculture Minister we spoke with recently, he indicated that he had submissions from rural groups, farming groups, that they did need Vietnam and others from Southeast Asia in the ag visa pool. Is that an encouraging sign that now that they've got their hands on the ministry, they can actually consult and find out, well, we do actually have a serious need here. We can't maybe go with what we went with in opposition?
Yes, and I would expect our Ag Minister, once he's spoken to farmers, to absolutely be on the same page, because how could you not be? And we have signed the agreement, I believe, with Vietnam, but the intention was to sign agreements with more Southeast Asian countries to allow more workers to come to Australia. And then there's also a pathway for many of them to settle, to raise their families and to be part of our regional communities for the future. And everyone in regional communities really embraces that, because we don't want people to come out to feel isolated from their own families and then to have to go back. And again, that means our workforce supply just is insecure when we need it the most.
Now, we talked briefly about the pandemic and its impacts previously. When it comes to the rural events, and one of them, they don't get much bigger than a Deni Ute Muster. It's back on after a couple of years off.
Yes, Brad Paisley, Jennifer Mauboy, Jessica Mauboy, I should say. Very exciting. But look, I know that people will just flock to Deni. They might not even know who's actually in the lineup, because they're really looking for great live music and a great weekend. So I hope to get there, but I'm not saying I will. I have, of course, been, like many of us in the past, and definitely an experience to remember.
It's certainly got to be encouraging, though, that a big event like that in your electorate, no less, is getting back up and running again, when a lot of major regional events have taken a break for a couple of years or run in a restricted fashion.
They have, and we were able to help many events to sort of keep them going, agricultural shows and live music events, and just big regional gigs like this one. We were able to help them to keep going. However, they do need support now that they're back up and running, and we can't afford for them not to go ahead, because many of them are really, they're just barely there. And I understand that, because you have to be able to run these things regularly, and you have to get good crowds, and we need to bring people back to them.
All right, Susan Lee, Member for Farrer and Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, thanks for joining us again today on Flow.
Thanks so much. Always a pleasure.